Welcome in, everyone. We're interrupting your usual flow right now for an urgent status report on a live, unfolding digital event. I'm your host, and today we're acting as your anchor at the digital news desk. We're actively tracking a live connection attempt. Think of it like a journey from a local browser straight to the front lines of one of the most prominent servers on the web today. Right, let's just dive straight into this. We've intercepted a sequence of critical status updates that reveal exactly what goes down in those literal milliseconds between when you hit enter and when a high-security website actually loads. This explainer is going to decode that raw data for you as if we're getting it live.
Okay, so here's the very first piece of breaking intel coming in. The transmission kicks off with three simple, seemingly polite words. Just a moment. Now, in the context of digital architecture, you got to understand this isn't some casual request. We need to frame this initial data for what it truly is. It's a sudden, mandatory holding pattern in our digital journey. When this directive flashes across the wire, it means normal traffic flow has been completely, momentarily suspended. You aren't being rejected, right? But you're definitely not being let in either. You are literally being held at the perimeter.
And our incoming data actually maps out the exact structural sequence of this whole unfolding situation. Based on the intel we're analyzing, this delay isn't random at all. It's a highly choreographed four-step protocol. Right now, we're tracking step 1, the holding pattern. But as the telemetry indicates, this is going to be followed by a verification clearance, then a really critical server handshake, and finally, a phase requiring specific browser tool enablement. Our mission today is to track this live connection through every single one of these structural checkpoints.
Which brings us to a critical juncture. We've got breaking intel on the very first major hurdle of this connection process. That holding pattern we just talked about? Well, it exists for a highly specific reason. It's essentially the invisible waiting room for security clearance. Behind the scenes, the system is actively assessing the inbound connection. It's asking, is it safe? Is this legitimate? We're standing by right now for the status of this security sweep.
And we have an update. The wire just returned a definitive status, and the exact text reads, verification successful. So the absolute crucial takeaway here is that the initial, invisible security checkpoint has been officially cleared. The holding pattern did its job, the digital guards at the perimeter have inspected the connection attempt and officially deemed it secure enough to proceed. Guys, this is a massive green light in our sequence.
But the journey is definitely not over. Let's look at how this builds into the next phase of our developing story. We're now shifting from a defensive posture of security assessment into an active latency period. See, verification means you're allowed to ask to come in, but it absolutely doesn't mean the door is actually open yet. The connection is hanging in the balance, shifting the burden of action completely away from the security checkpoint and over to the destination itself.
We now have eyes on the specific target destination of this entire operation. The data reads, waiting for OpenAI.com to respond. This confirms exactly who we're trying to establish a secure handshake with, OpenAI.com. The verification was a success. The request has been blasted across the web, and now? Now we're in a pure waiting game. It's this invisible digital handshake that is currently pending, just left hanging in the air until the OpenAI servers acknowledge the signal and reach back.
To put this into perspective, the sheer speed and chronological reality of this server wait period is honestly staggering. While we're sitting here analyzing this like a slowly unfolding news event, in reality these directives are firing off in literal fractions of a second. Second 1, the holding pattern triggers. Second 2, security clearance is granted. Second 3, the request hits the target server and the wait begins. Keeping the urgency high here is vital, because in the digital realm, these phases are executing in the absolute blink of an eye, yet every single one is a structural necessity.
Oh wait, I have an urgent update. The sequence just hit a wall. We've received a critical new transmission regarding mandatory technical requirements. The connection is totally stalled out and the server cannot complete the handshake until specific conditions are met on our end. So this is no longer just about waiting patiently for a response. It's a direct demand for action. We need to break down exactly what is required to breach this holding pattern right now.
Okay, here is the first technical backgrounder on these required directives. The data explicitly names JavaScript. Now, for our purposes today, we aren't just looking at JavaScript as some coding language. According to our connection intel, JavaScript is functioning as a mandatory passport for this digital border crossing. It's a specific browser feature that absolutely must be enabled. If this feature goes dark, the connection goes no further, period. It is a strict prerequisite to continue.
And we've just got the second half of the technical backgrounder. The directive doesn't just stop at JavaScript. It explicitly pairs it with another requirement, cookies. Our intel reports that these are additional browser elements that are entirely non-negotiable. They have to be enabled right alongside JavaScript. You can really think of them as the secondary authentication needed to validate the whole session. Without both of these tools actively running in the background, the progression of our connection remains indefinitely paused.
So the situation we're facing is strictly binary. It's black and white. On one hand, non-compliance, meaning tools are disabled, equals a stalled connection. All that successful verification work we just talked about, totally wasted if the environment isn't right. But on the other hand, compliance, tools enabled, equals the connection continues. It is a simple mechanical checkpoint. There is absolutely no gray area here. It's a strict if this, then that scenario, blocking our path to the server.
And here is the raw intel, the final, definitive directive received from our data stream. Enable JavaScript and cookies to continue. This is the ultimate resolution of our news event today. The successful verification and the server wait all culminate in this one specific demand. It requires direct action. The connection process has halted itself and is explicitly putting the responsibility right back onto the incoming browser to configure itself correctly before it takes even one more step forward.
So let's quickly summarize the key intel from today's explainer brief, just reviewing the full chronological journey we've just witnessed. Number 1, we started in a mandatory holding pattern with just a moment. Number 2, we successfully navigated the invisible security perimeter, achieving that verification successful status. Number 3, we identified our specific target, waiting for OpenAI.com to actively respond. And finally, numbers 4 and 5, we received the strict technical directives that mandatory tools, specifically JavaScript and cookies, must be actively enabled to finalize the entire connection.
It's truly fascinating when you break it all down like this, isn't it? A sequence that takes fractions of a second is actually a highly complex, multi-stage negotiation of security, identity, and technical compliance. So I'm going to leave you with this thought as we sign off from the Digital News Desk. The next time a blank screen politely asks you to wait just a moment, will you realize the intense digital security and complex server handshakes actively at play just beneath the surface of your screen? Thank you so much for joining me for this urgent connection status report. Stay curious.